All right, we're going to be reviewing for the final exam here. The positive square root 121 is positive 11. And then when you do your exponents, remember your index is 2. It's kind of like going 2 into 8. Because in there 4 times no remainder. So the square root of x to the 8th is x to the 4th. X to the 4th times x to the 4th would be x to the 8th. Same idea with the y to the 16th. 2 goes into 16. 8 times no remainder. And so we get y to the 8th. If you start with an even and end with an even exponent, you do not need the absolute value. It's only when you start with an even exponent and end with an odd exponent that you need absolute value. Multiply your numbers in front of the square roots. 5 times 4 gives us 20. And then square root 6 times square root 6, you could write as square root 36, but that's just the regular number 6. So 20 times 6 gives us 120. It's up to you whether you need this step in here. We've got 7 square roots of 5 plus 3 square roots of 5. That's 10 square roots of 5. And then we still have this minus 3 square roots of 20. Let's work with that and see if we can simplify that sum. 20, we can do a factor tree. Maybe 4 times 5, and then 2 times 2. So instead of writing the square root of 20, we can write the square root of 2 times 2 times 5. Square root of 2 times 2 is 2. Multiply that by the negative 3 in front. And so we have 10 square roots of 5 minus 6 square roots of 5. And so that gives us 4 square roots of 5. All right. You can either go to your subtraction every time, just be real careful with your signs, or you can distribute, think of that as like a negative 1, distribute it through the second polynomial. So the first polynomial stays the same. Second one, distributing a negative 1, we'll have negative 3x squared, negative x, and then positive 7. Look for like terms. So we got 14x squared plus negative 3x squared, that's 11x squared. So once you distribute that negative, you're treating it as addition. Negative 8x plus negative 1x is negative 9x. And then finally, 10 plus 7 is 17. Here we're multiplying binomials, so distribute twice. 4x times 4x, 16x squared. 4x times negative 5, negative 20x. 5 times 4x is 20x, and 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. Combine the like terms. Negative 20x plus positive 20x is 0. You don't have to write it. And so we get 16x squared minus 25. You may recognize that as the difference of two squares, and so you can check it by factoring. To get rid of the parentheses here, we'll distribute twice. 6x times 7x is 42x squared. 6x times negative 5 is negative 30x. Negative 1 times 7x is negative 7x, and negative 1 times negative 5, positive 5. Combine the like terms. Negative 30x plus negative 7x is negative 37x. Divide. 44 divided by 4 gives us 11 on top. For your m's, you've got exponents of 1 and negative 5, so 1's bigger. 1 minus a negative 5 is 6. M to the 6th will go on the bottom. For the n's, we've got 7 and negative 2. 7's bigger. 7 minus a negative 2 is 7 plus 2, that's 9. And to the 9th goes on the top because 7 was bigger. For the p's, you can think of it as p to the 0 and do 0 minus a negative 4, which is positive 4. The 0 would be bigger, put p to the 4th on top. Or you can just memorize anytime you have a negative exponent in a fraction, if you want to change the sign on the exponent, move it to the other part. If it's on the bottom, move it to the top. Changes the sign. If it's on the top, move it to the bottom. That changes the sign on the exponent. We've got a product to a power, so we'll raise each factor to the power. So 4 has to be cubed. The g cubed has to be cubed. And the h to the 4th has to be cubed. 4 to the 3rd power, 4 times 4 is 16 times 4 is 64. Power to a power multiply exponents, we'll have g to the 9th, and power to a power multiply exponents, h to the 12th. Here we want a factor. It's a trinomial. A is 1, so we can do the shortcut. What two numbers have a product of 18 that have a sum of 9? Of course, x times x is x squared. Two numbers that multiply to get 18. Product of 18, we would have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Now we're trying to get to a sum. Our goal is to get a sum of 9. So that would be a sum of 19, 11, 9. So 3 and 6 are the numbers that work. You can check it by distributing twice and combining like terms. Here we're, again, trinomial. GCF is 1, A is 1, so we're looking for two numbers whose product is negative 23, whose sum is negative 22. X times x gives us x squared. If your product is negative, then you have different signs. If your sum is negative, then the bigger number has to be negative. If you cover up the signs, the big one's negative. So positive 1, negative 23. Yeah, that has a sum of negative 22. So that's the pair you want. The order on your factors does not matter, but the 23 must be the negative and the 1 must be the positive. GCF here is 7. Factor out the 7. 7x squared. This is what you're thinking. 7x squared divided by 7 is x squared. Negative 28 divided by 7 is negative 4. Inside of parentheses, we have a binomial, and so we'll factor, it's the difference of two squares. Square root of x squared is x, so that's a perfect square. Square root of 4 is 2. It is the difference, so we'll have x plus 2, x minus 2. You can check it by multiplying all that together. One of the ways we worked this was to square root both sides. To get rid of squared, square root, make sure you do positive or negative on one side. So we get positive or negative 12. The other way to work this is to solve by factoring. Subtract 144 from each side. Not like terms, you can't combine them, just write it out. X squared minus 144, that's a binomial. And so it's the difference of two squares. Square root of x squared is x, and square root of 144 is 12. It is the difference. And so we'll have x plus 12, x minus 12. You got a product equal to 0, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Both of them are one-step equations. And so we'll subtract 12 to get the negative 12 answer. Add 12 to get the positive 12 answer. So either way works. If you do the first way, just make sure you do positive and negative. Let's solve by factoring. Let's subtract 20. By the way, if you've learned completing the square and prefer to do it that way or quadratic formula, you're welcome to. But this one will factor. On the left side, we've got a trinomial. A is 1, so we can do the shortcut. What two numbers multiply to get negative 20 that add to get negative 8? Pair that works is positive 2, negative 10. Gives you the right sum. So we'll have x plus 2, x minus 10. We've got a product equal to 0, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Get rid of plus 2, subtract 2. Get rid of minus 10, add 10. You can check these by plugging them back in and make sure you get the 20 on each side. 14. We're looking for, it's a trinomial on the left side, A is 1, so we can do the shortcut. What two numbers multiply to get negative 21 that add to get 4. If it helps you, you can start to make a list until you get the right pair. Product is negative, sum is positive, so the bigger one has to be positive. So negative 3, positive 7. So we can factor it into x minus 3x plus 7. Get a product equal to 0, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Only way you can multiply two things and get zeros if one of those things is 0. Add 3 to each side and you get 3 as a solution. Subtract 7 from each side and you get negative 7 as the other solution. Here we want to name each type of function. First one's a step function. Second one is exponential decay. Notice it's going downhill from left to right. Third one is a linear function. Straight line. Notice the word line and the word linear. And then the fourth one is exponential growth. From left to right, it's going uphill exponentially. All right, they bought a house for $125,000. It's going to appreciate, meaning go up in value, increase in value at 5% each year. So this is exponential growth. Formula we'll use y equals a, which is the original amount, times 1 plus or minus r, the growth rate, times the number of, or to the t power, to the number of time intervals power. So 125,000 is the starting amount. Growth, 5%, if you want to write that as a decimal, 0.05. And then t is the number of growth periods. It's 5% in a year, so 7 years. And then you can go to your calculator for this decimal approximation. And I guess we'll round it to the nearest whole dollar. To the nearest cent you're here, so we'll round up. And so it's $175,888 approximately at the end of 7 years. Trying to decide if it's an arithmetic sequence, so we'll take the second term, subtract the first. Now, some of you may be able to just look at it from left to right and tell, but if not, this is how you can find out. So we're going up by 0.4 to begin with. 0.1 minus negative 0.3 is also 0.4. And then 0.5 minus 0.1 is also 0.4. And so we would say, yes, it's an arithmetic sequence. The common difference is 0.4. We're going up by 0.4 from left to right. All right, they tell us it's a geometric sequence. We just got to figure out the next term. So find the common ratio by dividing the second term by the first. You get negative 3. So that's the R. So do negative 54 times negative 3 to find the next term. So we get positive 162. Yeah. So next term, positive 162. Notice it's alternating signs that happen when you have a common ratio that's negative. Trying to decide if it's arithmetic, geometric, or neither. All right, to try to figure out arithmetic, you do 5 minus a negative 25. That's 30. But then negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. So not arithmetic. Geometric, divide by the previous term and see if we come out with a common ratio. So we get negative 1/5. If we do negative 1 divided by 5, that's negative 1/5. And then positive 1/5 divided by negative 1. That is also negative 1/5, so it is geometric, and we can say the common ratio is negative 1/5. So that's our reason in concluding that it's geometric. All right, she's got 8 quarters, 5 dimes, 3 nickels. If one coin is selected at random, what's the probability that will not be a dime? So shorthand, you're looking at this. How many not dimes are there? Well, there's 8 plus 3, 11. Out of how many total? 16. And we're assuming that, I know these coins are not the same size, but we are assuming that they're equally likely. All right, this time we've got 5 red chips, 3 green chips, 2 yellow, and 2 blue. What's the probability of drawing a red? Not replacing it, so don't put it back, and then drawing a yellow. So that means these are deep-in events. So we'll find the probability of red. There's 5 out of 12. And then we'll find the probability of yellow after red has already been chosen. So red is already, 1 has been pulled out of that. So now we have 2 yellows out of a total of 11 chips. Multiply those together, you get 10 out of 132. They divide by 2, and so they simplify to 5 over 66. And notice it was dependent events. Of the boys. Okay, so that is a condition that must be met. And so we are just focused on the boys for this probability. What's the probability that a student does not play a sport? So that would be 10 out of 25. Which simplifies to 2 out of 5. If you divide them both by 5. All right, here what's the probability that a student chosen at random is a girl who does not play a sport? All right, so there's no condition that must be met. We're just choosing out of all the students, out of all 40, what's the probability that it's a girl who does not play a sport? So girls who don't play a sport is 4. So 4 out of 40, which simplifies to 1/10. If we change that to a decimal, you can put in your calculator. You get 0.1, which changed to a percent. You would then move your decimal point to the right 2 spots. Percent means out of 100. So if it's 1 out of 10, then that would be the same as 10 out of 100. Vertex, that's either going to be your minimum point or your maximum point. So in this case, it's the point 2, -4. It's a minimum. Axis symmetry, that's the line that would split your parabola in half. And so in this case, it's the line x equals 2. For quadratic functions, it's always going to be a vertical line. And then the range is the y values. So our y values go down to a minimum of -4, but the rest of them are above that, so y is greater than or equal to -4. And sometimes you may see it written a little bit more complicated. We could say the range is equal to all of the y's such that y is greater than or equal to -4. So those are equivalent answers there. Hope you study and do well on your final.